Live from Los Angeles, welcome back to Good Morning La La Land and this hashtag Wealth Wednesday. We are celebrating our health, and we've got filmmaker Raphael Sbarge in the house. Tell us a little bit about LA Foodways.
Yeah, LA Foodways is a film that we made for KCT. It's we co-produced it with them, and it's the simplest way to explain it is it's food at the intersection of history. So what we don't know, those of us who live in LA, I live in New York now, but I lived here for 20 years, and LA was a farm town. It wasn't just a farm town, however, it was the largest farming community in the U.S. We are surrounded by some of the best farmland, apparently, in the world. And
what happened to it? Hollywood?
What happened to it is that, of course, this incredible weather and all the sort of conditions that make what living in Los Angeles is so wonderful for, developers came in and swooped it up. So in the course of that, however, we are now home to the largest community of people dealing with food scarcity. It's 1.5 million people, right? So that's the population of some states. So what we tried to do was, in this case, telescope history, talk about kind of the elements, the things that sort of set us up, and explain where we are now. However, and I'm happy about this, we also then really focused on sort of groups, organizations that are doing incredible work, actually sort of addressing the issues and really making a difference. Organizations like Food Forward that goes out and recovers over 1 million pounds of food a month.
They're amazing. Oh my gosh.
Incredible.
Yeah, incredible.
Or Seeds of Hope that actually are planting gardens in empty lots, and on and on. So these organizations are really sort of addressing the issue. So it's a way to kind of take some tough subjects. They're tough subjects, but at the end, as a filmmaker, what I've been so gratified is that people have said they're so inspired. So, yeah.
When did your interest in food and history, when was it born?
You know, in this case, I can say, you know, I'm an environmentalist. I started a nonprofit called Greenwish with Ed Bigley Jr. and Sharon Lawrence and a few other wonderful people. We received a grant, and the grant then gave us sort of the green light to be able to sort of do this wonderful movie on the LA River, which is another incredible story. We think it's a drainage ditch.
Yeah, what river?
It's an amazing story. And so we made a film, KCT picked it up, and it airs a lot there. I did another film on climate change that they also picked up. And then I went in and said, you know, there's this group, Food Forward, we should make a film about them. And Juan Devis, who's the chief content officer there, he's done quite well. They were nominated for 24 Emmys last year and won 11.
Wow.
So they've done quite well. But he said, I've got this idea. Why don't we open it up, accordion it out? And so we talked about the history, and then we talked about the current issues. So it's a 1-hour feature, but it's also a digital series. It was 7 movies in all that we produced. The digital series has about a half hour more content, and the film kind of sort of restructures it and tells the whole story. But it's doing very well. The KCT.
I consider someone like you a badass. Like you've taken this thing where you take art, you take creativity, you put it all together, you find the money, and you impact and bring people to understand things that they don't know even where to find the information of how they can make a difference or what's really going on in Los Angeles. You are a badass, in my opinion.
Wow.
Like honestly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Thank
cool
you.
what you're doing.
Thank you. I mean, I'm a dad, and I have a daughter and a son, and as a parent, you wake up every day and you look in the world and you go, wow, they're going to inherit this place, and so. As a point of inspiration, how can I leave this place a little bit better for Gracie? That was my inspiration initially. At the end of the day, I'm also a storyteller. I've been an actor my whole life. I love working behind the camera, and this is a way to tell stories that hopefully, educate but also inspire. So thank you for what you said.
Cool.
Thank
What
you.
was the biggest surprise to you or shock when you were making this film?
So there's so many really cool things. So for example, if you drive through the valley and you see, trees, huge trees filled with oranges or grapefruits or, tangerines, lemons, right. The valley was all part of this giant citrus industry. That was 60,000 acres of citrus industry. And what happened was, at one time, the citrus industry, the actual orange was the first piece of fruit that actually had its own ad campaign. And this is before Hollywood, the techniques that they used to actually sell the California dream. So you weren't just eating a piece of fruit, you were actually eating health and wealth and California and all of those things. Well, all of those things ultimately were then translated to selling movies. That same kind of ad campaign was what was adopted to actually sort of put, this sort of idea of Hollywood being, kind of this magical place. and you know those wonderful. Maybe you've seen them. The you know the labels on the sides of fruit old boxes of fruit. Well, those were actually to sort of sell this California dream, right? And now when you drive through the valley and you see all these trees, know that those were all part of orchards, giant orchards, and some of those are 70, 80, 90 years old, and planted as part of this industry that lived here for the long time.
And isn't it interesting that the food, what you're talking about, some of those organizations, they take food can only it has to be perfect to go in the grocery store.
Yes.
And so there's all this food, all this vegetables and fruits that just looks a little dark or whatever.
Imperfect produce.
They're taking it
right.
out and they're doing all kinds of things with it. What do they?
Well, so it is an interesting story. So there is imperfect produce, but this is actually even a little bit different. You know, produce is obviously perishable, so sometimes it gets right, you know, to the edge. Maybe it's got a couple of spots. Maybe it's, you know, not quite perfect to sell at Whole Foods or Bristol Farms, but it's good and you can eat it, but it's time sensitive. So what happens is these organizations like Food Forward come in and they get it and they bring it to people, in this case, 350 different organizations that sort of, you know, distribute food to veterans and starving college students and the elderly and AIDS patients. And so this is a way of sort of taking abundance and bringing it to need, but it's a very simple way to do it. They also go and pick this fruit. If you've got a tree in your backyard and you don't, you know, I can't eat all those lemons or oranges. You call Food Forward, they send out volunteers and they'll take them and they'll give them to people who need them.
He's another
Incredible.
badass. He's also employing elderly people, and I mean that organization is it's so touching what
I think we
they're
have a video clip.
Yes, we
look.
do.
Oh, very
Let's take a peek.
Los Angeles as a region, it needs explanation.
Up until the 1950s, LA County was the largest agricultural county in the country.
That soil, as far as I'm concerned, was as good a soil as any place you could find in the world.
Now we're home to the largest food insecure population in the nation.
So many people have arrived here that are hungry, that need food in the midst of this multi-billion-dollar agricultural powerhouse of California.
Food waste and hunger, they're intertwined. They're two sides of the same coin.
We have this pile of food and we have this much need, but we don't have the bridges. We're trying to find ways to honor the ground that we walk on.
Maybe there's a middle ground in which we can recover connection to where our food comes from without ripping up all of the concrete.
To understand Los Angeles today, you have to understand its past. It started as a farm town.
Finding the future of LA food in LA's past. LA Foodways.
wow, amazing.
Yeah, so what people have been, I mean, LA history is so interesting, and we of course take for granted, you know, we're here, we think we know it, but its origins are fascinating. And then if you use that history as a way to kind of understand where we are, to actually use history not as a destination, but as a way to create relevance, to understand where we are now, I think when you drive into the valley and you look at those trees, you'll just look at them differently, and or the LA River or any of these things it's fascinating, and I've sort of been taken by it.
Well, thank you for bringing this history to life.
Yeah, what a joy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell everyone where they can find more about you and your films.
Oh yes, so you can find LA Foodways at kcet.org/LA Foodways. They have all of it there. That's the hour program, as well as then the 6 episodes, which have about 30 minutes more content. KCT is also rebroadcasting it all the time, but you can find it at that web address.
And where can they find and follow you?
Oh, I'm on Twitter at Raphael Sbarge. You can find me on Instagram also at Raphael Sbarge, my code name, and and Facebook and all the above. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody else. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more Good Morning La La Land.